stands for application lifecycle management. Okay, this is how we are managing our Anaplan models. Usually, if you see, we have four. We initially, whenever we got a requirement, we do the design part of it. Then we do the build part of it. Design means that we prepare the structure of the model in Excel. We create model schemas, we create prototypes, right? To see what exactly we are going to build. Then we do the actual development. We build all those modules, list, action, everything, right? Then we do testing around it. Sometimes we as a developer do unit and regression testing. Sometimes we have a separate QA team who do the testing for our development items, right? And then we do the production release. This is simple for ways, the simple cycle of any product, of any deployment that we have in Anaplan, right? Now we need to talk about what all components are there in order to, when we say deployment, what exactly we mean about deployment, right? So in Anaplan, if you see, you remember I told you a company purchase a workspace. Each workspace is more like a use case that I have a workspace for finance models. I have a workspace for supply chain model. I have a workspace for finance model, right? Similarly, apart from a use case, we also have different environment and different workspaces for different environment. So what can be those environment? It could be your dev environment, that where you have all your dev models of a specific use case. You can have a QA environment where you have all the QA models. Then you can have a UAT environment where you can have the UAT model, and then we can have a production environment. I'll tell you the differences. So in the dev model, we do we do all the development purpose, okay, by dev team, for dev team. This QA environment is for QA and testing by QA team, okay, with some proper data. UAT model is production data or with some proper data. So UAT users, how they are different from QA team. QA team is specifically to test and report any minor major bugs in the system. They check the integrity of the system, whether data is flowing from one model to another. They look into it's like a first initial check. When a developers build something, they do the unit testing. Then comes QA, who will do the initial testing, ensuring that it is working across and there is no impact to other functionalities because of this change. UAT people are actual users. Let's say we have 300 users and we have created a team of 3 people or maybe 5 people who will do UAT testing for us. So they will test from an end user perspective. Since they are also an end user, we take their help. They test this system. They make sure they provide us the real feedback. QA team will test us as per the user story and the acceptance criteria, whatever is mentioned in the user story. but the UAT team will give us the actual, if there is any column missing, and if they think that okay, this column will be very much helpful for us to identify and to prepare the forecast or to do their day-to-day activity easier, so they will request those type of columns during UAT testing to ensure whatever we are whatever we are deploying to production has a real business value, right? So that is the UAT, and production is the production model, the main model that we have, which is being used by the users. So these are the four environments usually we have in our Anaplan model. So for these environments, we create different workspaces. Okay. So let's say I have a use case. Maybe what I'll do is I'll have it slightly towards the right side. So if I have a finance use case, what different type of workspace I could be having? Let's say my company name is Company X. Okay. So I'll call Company X Finance Dev. This is the name of the workspaces. Workspace name. Okay. It is Company X Finance Dev. Then I'll copy it and I'll paste it across. So what we'll say call it as, we'll call it as, okay, just a second. This one we will call it as QA. This one we will call it as UAT. This one we will call it as prod. Okay. So these are the four workspaces that we have. Inside these workspaces, we can have multiple models like finance dev model, or maybe finance dev. I'll call it as model name. Then I could have finance QA. I could have finance UAT, and then I will have finance. I mean, usually prod models, we don't write prod in front of it. If a model name has nothing in front of it, we'll just consider it as a prod model, right? That's just a general practice. Depends on company to company, how they are naming their works, their models, right? So this is a standard practice. This is how your workspaces, different workspaces looks like, right? And we have different workspaces for different environments. So maybe we have given 50 GB to this particular workspace. We have given 30 GB to QA model, 30 or maybe 20 GB to QA model. This is the workspace limit, 30 GB to UAT model, and let's say 80 GB to production model. So that is, we also need to manage the workspaces, right? As per the enterprise license, you can either have 130 GB workspace or you can have 720. That's the basic configuration that companies have. For 720, of course, you need to pay a premium. The cost of this workspace would be very high. So not a lot of company is able to accommodate this. Majority of the company has this upper limit of 130 GB. So what does that mean is that they can purchase multiple workspaces. Let's say total size over here is 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 180 GB, right? So what this company could have done is this company could have purchased 130 GB across two licenses. Okay, licenses, or call it as two workspaces they have purchased. Okay, so that they have a total of 260 GB total workspace limit, total workspace, right? For each workspace, still there is a upper limit of 130 GB. So one workspace cannot exceed 130 GB, but they can split one workspace into many. So over here, they can split it like this, that 80, 90, 100. I mean, they can split it into like one workspace of 80 GB, one workspace of 30 GB. Total of all of this has to be 130. 130 total has to be 260 because they have purchased two workspaces, but they have the flexibility. They can reach out to Anaplan. We cannot do it as a company. Anaplan does it for us. So we need to tell them that this is our plan. These we need to create these many workspaces with this many size. So sometimes what happens is, let's say users are using UAT model. So my workspace is getting, this is almost 29 GB out of 30 GB, correct? So in this case, what happens is I can reach out to Anaplan and say that, okay, adjust 10 GB from production. So this will become 70 and this will become 40 now, so that I have an extra buffer of 11 GBs in the UAT environment. So this is the workspace management that we needed to do as a model builder as well, or as a senior person. This is also something we need to keep our eye on, that all the workspaces has enough buffer so that end users or whosoever is using it can test it properly, has enough space over here. Okay, any questions here so far? Are we good here, guys?
Yeah, good.
Okay, so this is very general, but something we need to discuss. This is mostly the workspace management, how we manage workspaces, and this is an ideal practice company follow, having different environment for different workspaces. Now we need to talk about some things about Anaplan specifically. This is general workspace management, but then what are the different types of modes of Anaplan, right? And apart from this, there are some terms which we need to discuss, which is important from ALM point of view. And those terms are structural data, production data, and non-prod data. Okay, so these three terms are very important. And this is a very common interview question as well, that what is, when people first ask that, have you worked on ALM? What is ALM? And then what is the difference between production versus non-production data? Okay, so for that we need to understand these three terms, very important. Any development activity that we do as a model builder, like create list, create module, create multiple actions, dashboard, pages, all the list configuration, all the module configuration, right? Everything that we do as a model builder is considered as a structure of the model, and hence it is being called as a structural data. Users cannot create modules, users cannot create lists, right? They cannot set up a list as a flat list or a numbered list. They cannot create a property. They cannot create a line item, change the format. All of that we can do as a model builder, and hence all of these things are considered as a structure of the model. and that is called structural data. Okay. So when we say we are doing deployment, when we say there is an ALM sync, we actually means moving those structural changes from dev model to production. That is a simple definition of ALM. Okay. So I'll write it down over here. ALM means moving structural data from dev model to production is called ALM. Okay. Now we need to understand, very important, what's the difference between production data versus non-production data. So I will give you an example. Let's say we have an employee list which has employees like E1, E2, E3. And then we have employee type. In the employee type list, we have full-time and we have part-time. Okay, these two members in the employee type list. So in this case, let's say this. So first of all, we configure a list as a production data versus non-production data. How exactly we do that, we'll come to that. But this is a list configuration. Like we make a list as flat list or number list. Similarly, by default, a list is a non-production data, and we can configure it to make it as a production data. Okay, let's say employee list, I'll make it as production data. I'll set it up as production data, whereas employee type list, I set it up as non-production data. Okay. So in this two types, what happen is, if it is a non-production data, what happens is the structure of list data moves from dev to prod. What does that mean is that whatever list items I have added in the dev model, those list items, first of all, list will move to production because that is the structure of the model. But inside the list, whatever list items that I have added, if I'm making it as a non-production data, those list items will become the structure of the model. So I'll write this definition also. In case of non-production data, list item becomes structure of the model, and since structure of the model moves from dev to prod during ALM sync, so the structure of list data also moved from dev to prod. So this full-time and part-time will move from dev model to the production in the employee type list. So we will see that these two members are already present because the list items becomes structure of the model. Okay, and during ALM sync, the structure moves from dev to prod. This is dev, this is prod. Okay, also in case of non-production data lists, we cannot add, delete, rename the list items directly in the production. So what happens is, if I wanted to rename this in the production, I will not be able to do it because because in production, we cannot change the structure of the model, right? If you want to change the structure of the model, you do it in the dev and then do the ALM sync and sync it to the production, right? So that is the case with the non-production data. What happens with production data is completely opposite, right? list items does not move from dev to prod. Okay. Secondly, let me copy and paste this. We can add, delete, rename items directly in the production. So that is the flexibility that we get when we mark a list as a production data. We can add, delete, or rename the list items directly in the production, and they does not move from dev to prod. So production list would be empty, correct? I have the flexibility to add, delete, or rename it. Okay. So that's about production versus non-production data. Let me know if you have any questions around it. Very important topic. People ask this topic in the interview. What is the difference? So if you have any questions, we can discuss now.
Yeah, it's a little confusing. So you say production data is um, it's the actual employee. Let's say employee list is there. The so you get in anyway anything you do first you start in the dev environment, right?
Yes.
So in the dev you create both employee list and employee type.
Yes.
Then why is it non-production and production data? Like,
So we mark this list as production data and we mark this list as non-production data. Since I mark this list as production data, whenever I do the ALM sync, this list will move to production, but the list items of this list, the employees, will not move from dev to prod because I have marked it as a production data. But in the other example, the employee type list, since I have marked this as non-production data, so what happens is the list items becomes the structure of the model, and these list items during ALM sync will move to prod, and I cannot change it directly in the production. I cannot create any new item, cannot delete it because this is a structure of the model because I have configured this list as non-production data. But if you mark it as production data, the list items won't move from dev to prod. You have to directly add the employees in the production.
So what is the criteria? How you define is it's a production, it's non-production?
It depends upon the list. So employees, we want, if we wanted users to add directly in the production, we need to mark that list as a production data. If employee list is being loaded from a CSV file and we want to load that CSV file into the production, we need to mark those lists as production data. Employee type will never change. It will be always full-time and part-time, right? So we know that this is something that we don't want to upload in the list. We don't want to alter the list items. So we will mark this list item as non-production data. So based upon whether you want to change those list items in the production, we mark it as production data or non-production data. Let me know if you guys are not able to understand. I can repeat and you guys can ask question that what's the question.
Mm, kind of employ that means uh, employee type. If employee type is marked as a non-production,
Mhm.
that means like this full time, and like I'm comparing tables and here the structure. So full time and part time, that will be a column, and that's
Mm,
why it's a structure. Is it
No,
like
no,
that?
no. Because we have configured it as non-production data, these two items becomes a structure of the model and it will be moved from dev to prod only. It's not about whether it's in rows or columns, it's the list item, right? It's the data in the table. Whether you want to flow it from dev to prod as a structure, or you want users to directly add the items in the table in the production, that is what you have to decide. Employees is something that users will load from a CSV file. So we need to keep on updating the employee data, not data, but we need to keep on updating the employees. We will be adding employees in future. We will be deleting employees in the future, right? So we cannot consider employee items, employee list items as the structure of the model because it will change frequently. So we have to configure employee list as a production data so that we can add, delete, and update the list items directly in the production. And the employees that we create in the dev should not flow to the production because production employees will be different. Dev employees could be dummy employees, which we have created for our testing. But production employees, we will receive a CSV file directly from Workday, which will have confidential information, right? So we cannot load that data into the dev. So to separate the data set in the dev and in the prod, we have configured this list as a production data list. Okay, so it's about whether you want to move the list items from dev to prod or you want to maintain it directly in the production. That is the deciding criteria. You mark employee list as a production data because you want to change the employees in production, and you are marking employee type list as non-production data because that will never change. The structure remains same, right? The list items of employee type list will be full-time and part-time always. It will never change. So that's why we are making it as non-production data. If in future, let's say I wanted to add a third employee type as intern, so I will go to dev model, add the third list item, do the ALM sync and sync it to the production. I will not be able to directly add it in the production. I have to do the ALM sync. But in case of employees, you can keep on adding employees in the dev and flow it to production, right? If you mark it as on production data, you need to load the file, add the employee in the dev, and then you have to sync it to the production. So that is not a viable option for employee list. Since you want to directly maintain employees in the production, you will mark that list as a production data.
Okay.
Is it clear now? This is important to be cleared because this is
So
directly
so
we will be
so
asked.
if
Yeah.
so if you have flags, kind of flags, yes, y or and so you will define
Yes,
it as a non-production data, correct?
exactly. Yes. Anything
Okay.
that will change frequently in the production, that will be configured as production data. Anything which will not change in production will be non-production data.
Mm, got it.
Are you good, Pradeep?
Yes.
Okay. You are also clear, Satish, right?
Yeah.
I'm asking multiple times because this is, again, everyone will ask. So you need to understand it. If you don't understand that this is the time, we can discuss it multiple times. I can try to explain in multiple ways, but this is the time for you to stand up and say that, okay, can we have more examples? Of course, we'll be doing a practical on it. We'll see how it looks on Anaplan, how
So
exactly
so
data
so
moves.
so
Yeah,
for that you need to know the data, correct? Like whatever you are uh, using, whatever data you are loading, you should know that. Then and then only you are able to correct define it as a production or non-production data.
No, it's about, let's say, a product list is there. I know product list will change in production. For products is coming from SQL, right? So that is something we will be automating, and it will keep on coming from SQL environment through automation. So product list, I will mark it as production data. Whatever list which is being populated from integration, from a CSV file, from Data Hub, all of those lists will be marked as production data. We need to consider that, right? Employee list is coming from Data Hub, so it will change every day. We need to add employees every day, right? Maybe every month also, if we have to add. If you have a use case to change the list items in the production, you need to mark all of that list as a production data. Regardless you know the data or not, whether you know that employees will change ever or not, or we only have 100 people in the company, that doesn't matter. If you will be changing it, make it production data. So employee is very common. It will keep on changing every month, every day, right? So we will have some frequency. That frequency could be monthly, it could be quarterly also, but still we have to change it. We cannot load the file in dev and then sync it to production. That is not a valid ideal way of doing it, right? If something is changing, make it production data and let it directly flow in the production. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So now since we understand structural data, production data, non-production data, we can now talk about, let me go over here, different types of Anaplan model modes. Okay, so what does that mean is, if I open the Anaplan model, bottom left, you see a setting option called manage models. You see change mode type over here. So we have four types of model modes: standard, deployed, locked, and archived. Okay, standard, deployed, locked, and archived. Okay, so what does these modes represent? So our dev models are in standard mode. The reason is, in the standard mode, the structural data is editable. What does that mean is that you can create list, you can create module, you can create actions, you can do all the model building activities because you have configured the list as standard mode. By default, a model is in standard mode, so you can change things, create list, create modules, you can do all that kind of things directly in that model. Hence, it is called standard mode. If you change a mode of a model to deployed, it is more of a production model. Okay. In deployed mode models, we cannot make structural changes. So here we can make structural changes. In the deployed mode, we cannot make structural changes. Okay. What does that mean is that, let me expand it. So structural change means that you cannot create a list, you cannot create a line item, create a module, action, anything. It will automatically be restricting you, will not allow you to make all any of those changes, right? Because in production, we don't want to make any structural changes because there is an ALM setup. So all the structural changes will move from dev. Anaplan itself will not allow you to make any change, any structural change in a prod model How Anaplan knows whether this is a prod model or this is a dev model? Anaplan knows it the way you are setting up the model, what mode you are setting. So for dev model, if you are making it as standard mode, you will be able to make structural changes. If a model you made deployed, ideally the model is a production model because you don't want anyone to make any structural changes. So all a production model is in deployed state. All a dev model is in standard state, standard mode. Okay. The third option is for the read-only models. If you are locking a model, if you are making it into the locked state, the whole model becomes read-only mode. You will not be able to add anything to the list. You won't be able to enter any data. For everyone, it becomes locked. Okay. We don't have a use case for it. Usually, we don't make any models read only, right? So, but just in case if you have a requirement, the simple option for you is lock the model. No one will be able to make any changes. Everything is in the read only mode. Okay. Archived mode, just like this option we have in WhatsApp also, archive chats. What does that mean is that the chat is not deleted, but it is not in your main window. Similarly, in Anaplan, if you are archiving a model, that model will not take size in the workspace, but that model is not also deleted. It will be present in the list of archived models. And where you can see that is, if I go to the Anaplan model, if you see all of these models, you see a checkbox down below, show archived models. So you click on it and you will see all the archived models. Maybe I can show you one. So if this is an empty model, I come here, or maybe I'll archive the data hub model now. I change mode, I'll make it archived. That's it. You just need to click on it and the model is gone from the workspace. Correct. I click on show archived models. Now this model you see with this box sign, this is the sign of archived state, right? So this model is archived. I cannot open it because it's not in the workspace right now. It's in the archived state. If I have to unarchive it, I'll change the mode to standard and now the model is available for me. Okay. So that is about it. These are the four different types of model modes. And apart from these four modes, we have two more things, online and offline. So if you are making the model online, everyone will be able to see it. If you are making it offline, non-workspace administrator, which means the end users, will not be able to open the model. It's kind of a maintenance state. If you are doing a deployment, ideally you will make the models offline so that no user will be able to enter any data. Model will be offline, end users won't be able to open it. We do the ALM sync. Once it is done, we will send the communication and we will bring the models online again. Okay, so that is the two different modes. This is not modes, but this is just making a model online and offline.